Have you ever witnessed the quiet authority of someone who doesn't need to perform for attention? They don't seek validation through noise or immediate reaction. Instead, they cultivate an inner stillness. And in that stillness, the world around them seems to recalibrate. Suddenly, the usual clamor quiets, and a space opens for genuine connection, a yearning for understanding. Now consider turning that lens inward. What if you consciously chose the pause over the immediate response? Contemplation over impulsive action, a deliberate withdrawal to observe rather than an automatic engagement? What shifts might occur not just in your external world, but within the very landscape of your being? This isn't about retreating from life. It's about strategically choosing where and how you invest your most precious resource, yourself. For too long, many of us have operated under an unspoken agreement, a societal conditioning that equates our worth with our constant availability, emotionally, mentally, even physically. We've been subtly taught that to be valued is to be accessible, to be a perpetual sounding board, a readily available source of support, often at the expense of our own inner equilibrium. But what if this very accessibility has become an invisible cage? Think about it. When you are always on call, always ready to soothe, to explain, to jump into the fray, you become predictable. And predictability, while seemingly fostering connection, can paradoxically lead to being taken for granted. You risk becoming the emotional equivalent of a utility, switched on when needed, and perhaps forgotten when not. The very act of being constantly present for others can inadvertently lead to an absence from yourself. Consider the subtle ways this plays out. The immediate reply to a message that disrupts your focus, the forced smile when your energy is depleted, the agreement to a request that stretches you thin. Each of these small acts, driven by a desire to please or avoid conflict, chips away at your inner reserves. And at the end of the day, that lingering sense of depletion, that unnameable weariness, could it be the echo of your own needs being consistently deferred? This isn't a call to build walls, but an invitation to cultivate a discerning heart, to recognize that your silence, your considered withdrawal, can hold more power and truth than a flurry of immediate responses for those who may not truly see you. The renowned philosopher Epictetus wisely noted, "It is impossible to begin to learn that which one thinks one already knows." Perhaps this constant availability has become a default setting, a seemingly known quantity that prevents us from exploring the deeper currents of our own inner world and the dynamics of our relationships. When you consciously choose to become less immediately accessible, you disrupt the established patterns. And in that disruption, profound insights can emerge, revealing not just how others perceive and interact with you, but more importantly, how you relate to yourself. Who truly notices your absence? Not as a weapon or a manipulation, but as a shift in your energetic presence? Who becomes agitated by your silence, attempting to provoke a familiar reaction? These responses can be illuminating, casting a light on the underlying dynamics of the relationship and the extent to which your availability has been taken for granted. It reveals who seeks genuine connection and who seeks only the comfort of your predictable responses. With every knee-jerk reaction, every forced yes, every attempt to smooth things over at your own expense, you inadvertently cede a piece of your vital energy. And what remains when that energy is constantly dispersed? A quiet erosion of self. This isn't about turning away from the world, but about turning towards yourself, towards a more integrated and authentic way of being. It's about recognizing that true strength often resides not in the constant outward flow, but in the mindful conservation of your inner resources. Think of your inner world as a wellspring of energy. Every interaction, every thought, every emotion draws from this well. The crucial question then becomes, are you consciously directing this flow? Or are you allowing the demands and expectations of the external world to dictate its course? Every impulsive reaction, every defensive posture against unwarranted criticism, every engagement in draining arguments, every attempt to win the approval of those who offer little in return, these are expenditures of your precious psychic energy. The Stoic philosophers understood this profoundly. They emphasized the importance of discerning between what is within our control, our thoughts and actions, and what is outside our control, the opinions and actions of others. Reacting impulsively often places us squarely in the realm of the uncontrollable, allowing external forces to dictate our internal state. As the ancient wisdom suggests, what we resist tends to persist. The more you find yourself constantly reacting, the more entangled you become in the very dynamics you seek to navigate. Those who consistently feel emotionally depleted are not inherently weak. Their energy is often simply misdirected, scattered across interactions and situations that do not replenish them. And in this state of exhaustion, vulnerability takes root. Just as a weakened immune system makes the body susceptible to illness, a depleted psychic energy field makes you more susceptible to manipulation and the draining demands of others. Those with opportunistic tendencies can sense this lack of energetic boundaries, this tendency to react and overextend, and they may consciously or unconsciously exploit it. A resilient inner life, a healthy psyche, is one that knows how to safeguard its energy. This involves the ability to say no without the burden of guilt, to embrace silence without feeling the need to fill every void, to observe and understand before leaping into action. True power lies not in the speed or intensity of your reactions, but in the deliberate choice of when and how to engage. This conscious choice is only possible when you cultivate a deep understanding of your own triggers, those emotional tripwires that set off automatic responses. How often have you replayed conversations in your mind, losing precious sleep over unresolved conflicts or trying to decipher the motivations behind someone else's behavior? This mental rumination is a significant drain on your psychic energy, keeping alive echoes of the past and fueling cycles that persist only through your continued engagement. Your psychic energy, when consciously guarded, creates a powerful presence. You enter a space and command a certain respect, not through overt displays, but through an aura of inner stillness and self-possession. Conversely, when this energy is poorly managed, you can become almost invisible, constantly reactive, and vulnerable to the whims of the external world. Therefore, begin to observe your own patterns of reaction. What situations, what types of interactions consistently pull you off center? These are the very points where your energy is leaking, and these are the areas that require your conscious attention. The goal isn't to become cold or indifferent, but to cultivate a discerning awareness, to become sovereign over your own energetic boundaries. And here lies a profound insight. When you consciously conserve your energy, you disrupt the projections that others place upon you. This can be deeply unsettling for those who have grown accustomed to relating to a projected image rather than the authentic you. You might believe you are in conscious control of your emotional responses, but the reality is that many of these reactions are deeply ingrained patterns, learned responses that can be easily triggered by those who understand these dynamics. Manipulative individuals often don't need overt force. They simply press the exposed buttons, and your predictable reactions follow. This dance of trigger and response is often fueled by what psychologists call projection, the unconscious attribution of one's own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or qualities onto others. But there's a less discussed aspect of this phenomenon. While others project onto you, you can also become a receptacle for these projections, especially when you are consistently emotionally available. Think of the friend who only appears in times of crisis, the partner who consistently relies on you as the rescuer, the person who offers praise contingent on your usefulness. These interactions are often not about genuine connection with the authentic you, but rather a relationship with the idea of you, the role you have implicitly or explicitly agreed to play. Why do we often agree to these roles? Fear, the fear of disappointing others, the fear of losing affection, the fear of being abandoned. The most insidious forms of manipulation often operate not through overt demands, but through the subtle language of guilt, the unspoken implication that you should be available, that you ought to help, that you must understand, even when it comes at a significant personal cost. The crucial turning point arrives when you cease to react predictably, when you begin to say no, when you meet demands with silence, when you choose thoughtful withdrawal over immediate explanation. The projections others have cast upon you begin to dissolve. The masks they have unconsciously placed on you start to crumble. This can leave others feeling deeply unsettled because the familiar image of you, the one they thought they knew and could rely on, is no longer there. Worse, they are now confronted with the necessity of looking inward, a confrontation not everyone is prepared for. Your conscious unavailability becomes a mirror, reflecting back the emptiness or insecurities they have been projecting onto you. Your silence forces them to confront their own internal noise, the very discomfort they sought to avoid by engaging with your predictable reactions. This shift can often be met with resistance, criticism, accusations of being different or cold, emotional drama, not because you are wrong, but because you have disrupted a dynamic in which they held a certain control through your responsiveness. As the wisdom suggests, true enlightenment comes not from imagining idealized versions of ourselves or others, but from acknowledging and integrating our own shadows. When you withdraw from these draining cycles, the shadow aspects of those who have relied on your availability begin to emerge. This can be a challenging experience, both for them and for you as you navigate the discomfort of being misunderstood or even rejected for prioritizing your own well-being. But it is precisely in this space, in the silence that follows the rupture of old patterns, that a new and more authentic form of power begins to take root. The modern world often glorifies noise, the constant barrage of opinions, the pressure to respond instantly, the endless pursuit of validation through external engagement. Yet there exists a profound power in silence, a power often underestimated and rarely mastered. This isn't the silence of passivity or fear, but a conscious, strategic, and deeply insightful stillness. A silence that isn't an absence, but rather an amplified presence, a potent form of communication that transcends words. Ancient philosophies across cultures have recognized the transformative potential of silence. It is in these moments of quietude that the internal chatter subsides, allowing for deeper observation. When you consciously choose to stop reacting, you begin to see the underlying patterns at play, the recurring emotional loops, the subtle games of manipulation, the self-sabotaging tendencies that often operate beneath the surface of our awareness. Silence cultivates lucidity, a clear-sightedness that can be deeply unsettling for those who thrive on your reactivity and emotional entanglement. Have you noticed the discomfort some people exhibit when you don't immediately respond? When you don't offer explanations? When you simply create space? It's often not about missing you as an individual, but rather about the disruption of their narrative control. As long as you engage verbally, you remain within the confines of the game. But when you embrace silence, you subtly shift the rules, unbalancing anyone who relies on your predictable reactions to maintain their equilibrium. True silence is not merely the absence of spoken words, it is the mastery of your own energetic output. It is the conscious refusal to be dragged into emotional maelstroms that serve no constructive purpose. It is the deliberate choice to conserve your inner resources for engagements that truly align with your values and well-being. The path toward becoming your most authentic self often necessitates periods of conscious distancing, for it is in the quietude of solitude that you can truly hear your own inner voice, unfiltered by the expectations and demands of the external world. However, this embrace of silence comes with its own set of challenges. It may create distance from those who only valued you for the role you played in their lives. It may render you incomprehensible to those who could only perceive you through the lens of their own projections. You might be perceived as cold, aloof, or even arrogant. But these reactions often speak more to the discomfort of those who never sought your depth, only your utility. The deeper you journey into self-awareness, the more discerning you become with your words. You begin to understand that each utterance carries an energetic weight, and not everyone deserves access to your inner landscape. Sometimes silence isn't a retreat, it is an act of sovereignty, a declaration that you no longer need to prove your worth or justify your boundaries to anyone. Silence can be profoundly uncomfortable for others because it compels them to confront their own thoughts, their own internal noise, without the distraction of your engagement. Your absence of explanation speaks volumes, and those who feel threatened by it often reveal the extent to which they relied on your imbalance to maintain their own sense of control. But perhaps the most profound power of silence lies not in its impact on others, but in its capacity to reconstruct you from within. It is in this quiet internal space, free from the clamor of external demands, that you begin to reclaim your vital energy and reconnect with your essential self. It's one thing to intellectually grasp these concepts, but true transformation lies in consistent action. If you continue to say yes when your inner voice screams no, if you keep responding to messages that drain you, if you persist in empty conversations and maintain relationships out of inertia, then awareness remains merely a superficial understanding. Conscious unavailability is not about cultivating coldness or indifference. It's about deliberately choosing where and how you invest your energy, your time, and your peace. It's about no longer being perpetually accessible for every demand, every whim. This shift begins with small, deliberate acts. Pausing before reacting, choosing silence over an immediate response, excusing yourself from draining discussions, turning off your phone without guilt, and confidently stating "not today" or "I'm not available for that." Crucially, you owe no one an explanation for your boundaries. Your silence in these instances is not an act of defiance, but a declaration of self-respect. This lack of justification can be unsettling for those accustomed to you operating within their emotional narratives. Always the accommodating, understanding presence. The journey of self-discovery often involves periods of what might feel like isolation, but it is not a depressive withdrawal. It is a sacred solitude, a time of inner retreat where you relearn to hear your own voice above the noise of the world. It is a process of rebuilding your identity from your own center, rather than from the reflected gaze of others. A powerful indicator of your growth is observing who begins to distance themselves when you become more reserved, who attempts to provoke you when you cease reacting predictably, and who accuses you of changing when you finally prioritize your well-being. These reactions are not signs that you are on the wrong path. They are often confirmations that you are breaking free from old limiting patterns. Embracing conscious unavailability can initially feel uncomfortable. You might grapple with guilt or the fear of being perceived as selfish or harsh, but this discomfort is often a natural part of the deconstruction process, the unraveling of a lifetime of conditioning to prioritize others' needs above your own. Remember, you have been trained to put yourself last. Shifting this ingrained pattern will inevitably create friction, not just within yourself, but also in your interactions with those who benefited from the old dynamic. Conscious unavailability is the bedrock of self-determination. Every no you offer to external demands is a resounding yes to yourself. Every withdrawal from a toxic environment is a powerful affirmation that your inner peace holds immeasurable value. And every instance where you choose silence over explanation marks the beginning of a new form of respect, even if it is initially understood by few. Not everyone will be ready for this more authentic version of you, as your emotional self-possession will expose the vulnerabilities they have sought to avoid by relying on your reactivity. This is where the potential for rupture lies, and with that rupture may come feelings of pain, loneliness, and estrangement. But recognize this not as a loss, but as a liberation, a shedding of what no longer serves your growth. When you consciously choose to step back from being perpetually available, a profound transformation begins to unfold. Initially, there may be an unsettling silence, an internal void that seems to amplify your doubts. You might question your choices, wondering if you've gone too far, if you are losing connections that once felt important. But gradually, this silence shifts. It becomes a space for cleansing, for inner calm, for profound healing. And then emerges solitude, not the isolating loneliness of absence, but the rich and empowering solitude of self-presence. It is the solitude of the strong, of one who no longer compromises their own inner truth to maintain external validation. In this space where once there was confusion and anxiety, clarity and peace begin to take root. Where neediness once resided, a new and resilient form of inner strength blossoms, the strength of being whole and complete within yourself. The journey toward your authentic self often requires a conscious distancing from the collective, a temporary stepping away from the masks we wear to navigate the social landscape. It is in these periods of intentional solitude that you can truly reconnect with your core essence, no longer defined by external expectations. This is not a flight from the world, but a courageous return to your own center. In this process, you transition from being a mere reactor to becoming a deliberate creator of your own reality. You cease to be solely shaped by external circumstances and begin to shape your life from the wellspring of your inner wisdom. Those who feel discomfort with your newfound unavailability often reveal that they were more attached to the role you played than to the authentic you. And as you outgrow that role, they may no longer know how to relate. This realization, though potentially painful, is ultimately liberating. You may indeed lose certain connections along this path, but in that letting go, you create space to find yourself more fully. You might distance yourself from environments that no longer resonate, only to reconnect with your deepest values and aspirations. You may be misunderstood by some, but ultimately, you will garner a deeper, more authentic form of respect from those who truly see you. When you are no longer readily available for every demand, your presence becomes more valued, more rare, more unforgettable. This journey is a rebirth, a new beginning where you no longer settle for emotional scraps, for manipulative games disguised as affection, for voids seeking to be filled by your constant output. You begin to align your life with what truly resonates with your inner peace, your authentic truth, and your inherent wholeness. If you have resonated with this message, it is likely because a part of you is already yearning for this transformation, already understanding that external validation is hollow if it requires the abandonment of self. True self-love begins with the courageous choice of yourself, even if it necessitates a period of solitude. So I ask you now, what is your answer? Are you ready to embrace the discomfort of being misunderstood, perhaps even rejected, in the pursuit of your own inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of living authentically? If this message has resonated deeply, I invite you to affirm that commitment in the comments below. I choose my peace. Let us witness the collective strength of those who are ready for this profound shift. And know that this is not the end of the journey, but a significant step forward. The path of reclaiming your energy and living authentically is an ongoing exploration. Stay tuned for the next part, where we will delve even deeper into the practical strategies for safeguarding your inner world and cultivating a life rooted in self-sovereignty. It is a continuation of this vital conversation, one that holds more transformative power than you might yet imagine. I look forward to connecting with you there. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more valuable videos. Mind Unbound.